let's get into some football.
All right, let's do it.
Because with your podcast, it is the
IDP Show.
IDP, which
so
is...
it's fantasy football, and it's a niche of fantasy football called IDP, which is individual defensive players. And so this is fantasy football for like extreme nerds, because you, instead of drafting a team defense like the Colts defense, for example, you would draft players from that defense. So like DeForest Buckner, Darius Leonard, Kari Willis. And so you end up playing in these leagues with much larger rosters. Yeah. Because you typically, like in our main league, we'll start 11 offense, 11 defense. So it requires... we like to joke, degenerates play IDP. It requires a sort of sickness to say, I want fantasy football times like 10. So that's our niche.
But you think about it, as a fan, yes, I always thought the Baltimore Ravens were a great defensive team. But, man, Ray Lewis and Ed Reed were the heart and soul behind those teams.
Yep.
If you could just pick those two.
That's right.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yes.
You know, because just because a touchdown was given up doesn't mean it should go against Ed Reed or go against Ray Lewis.
That's right.
And those are only two examples I'm coming up with. Like, think about Honey Badger.
Yep.
Like, Honey Badger rarely gives anything up.
Yep.
But if the Chiefs allow something deep and he has nothing to do with it, that goes against your Chiefs defense.
Yes, and that's the kind of interesting part of IDP is you have to find these guys, because sometimes bad defensive players are great IDPs. Because think about like Jalen Ramsey, best cornerback in the league, lockdown corner. What do you need to have success in fantasy football? You need stats.
Yeah.
If Jalen Ramsey isn't getting thrown at, isn't there not running the ball to his side, guess what? No tackles, no interceptions, no touchdowns, no pass deflected, no stats. So Jalen Ramsey,
no points.
That's right, for as good as he is not going to score you points. And so you have to walk that fine line between this player is good enough not to get benched, but they're not so good, and typically it's only with cornerbacks, they're not so good that they're being schemed out of each play.
Right.
So it's this really fun, formula of trying to look at each team and determine who's going to be on the field, who is going to see the ball coming their way. Maybe they're a cornerback that's a little bit of a liability in coverage, so they're going to get what? A lot of tackles, a lot of chances for pass breakups. So, yeah, it amplifies, rather than a lot of people are worried it's going to water down their enjoyment of regular offensive fantasy football. No. It just amplifies your enjoyment of football and fantasy to a whole nother level.
It would also be, you have to know the game so much more, because here's the thing, just because I'm a Titans fan, when you have Julio Jones on one side and A.J. Brown on the other, there's going to be very little man-to-man defense. There's going to be a whole lot of zone.
Yep.
Because you have to drop those safeties.
Yep.
Otherwise, they're going over the top. So now you have to know, we're playing Tennessee this week. Who do I need that's going to be a good zone cover?
That's right.
So that is such an interesting topic. Your whole family are Colts fans.
That's right.
Colts fans. So are you one of those people... my brother's very guilty about this. He picks players he likes.
Yeah, it is truly in offensive-only fantasy football, right? It's very easy to stack players from your favorite team, especially. Yeah. When you have twice as many players in your starting lineup, the temptation is twice as strong. So do I have way too many Colts players on my main team? Yes, I do.
Their defense is solid, though.
Thankfully, yes, their defense is good. I wouldn't be doing that if these guys weren't worth rostering. But, the temptation is definitely there.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Who would you consider a sleeper this year in fantasy football? And we'll start with offense. Who is an offensive player that maybe over the past 3-4 years has not produced what they probably should have?
Yep.
And this year you think it's going to be a breakout season?
So one that I've really been pounding the table for is Matthew Stafford.
Really?
With the Los Angeles Rams, they're actually my Super Bowl pick. A lot of fantasy football analysts, if you look at rankings for the 2021 season, would have Stafford somewhere around 12 to 14. I would peg him top 5. Because you look at Sean McVay, best play caller, up there with Andy Reid, Sean Payton, those three guys in some order. Plus, you look at the plethora of weapons this team has between, Cooper Kupp. You have WKU's own Tyler Higbee. You have Robert Woods. You have losing Cam Akers was a blow, but you still have Darrell Henderson. You just traded for Sony Michel. You've got sleepers like Jacob Harris at tight end on that team. So Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell from Louisville. This offense, I think, is going to put up I'm seeing Stafford as potential for like 45 touchdowns, 5,000 yards.
Could we consider this maybe a most improved player kind of pick this year?
Could be, because he was trapped on the Lions with a lot of bad coaches, not a lot of great surrounding talent outside of occasional flashes like obviously Hall of Famer Calvin Johnson. But the upgrade from the play calling, the talent, yes, I think this is the best talent he's ever had, but he's had guys in the past in Detroit. But the play calling that will set him up for success, you hear that so much in the NFL, and it is a cliche, but truly, the coaches were not setting him up for success in Detroit.
He also never, when you have a quarterback that can throw the ball, and we know Matthew Stafford can air that ball out, when you have a quarterback that doesn't have a run game, you don't freeze a defense with play action. Everybody knew he was throwing to Megatron, and he still did it.
That's right.
So this year you're saying we've got a run game, we've got receivers all over the field, and we've got a coach that's going to call the right plays.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I'm interested in that pick.
Matthew Stafford. Here, I'll give you a wide receiver as well that I really like, that I actually roster in our main league, is Henry Ruggs from the Las Vegas Raiders. So this was the number 1 overall wide receiver taken in last year's draft. Had a pretty underwhelming rookie season. A lot of the rookie wide receivers were overshadowed by the fact that Justin Jefferson suddenly vaulted into the top 5 or 6 wide receivers in the league. But you look at a lot of the second-year wide receivers, Jefferson excluded, between CeeDee Lamb and, T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk from the 49ers. I think Ruggs has the potential, because you look at what has been subtracted from this Raiders offense. It was Nelson Aguilar, who we love to, make a meme out of. There's that famous clip of the guy catching babies from the burning building.
Aguilar.
Unlike Aguilar. So he's gone, and he was actually the Raiders' leading receiver if you went back and looked. Now, Darren Waller's still there. He's going to command a ton of targets. But you listen to kind of the drumbeat coming out of Raiders camp, it is all around how they think Ruggs is going to take this step. Given the draft capital, given the opportunity now with the vacated targets, with Aguilar out the door, I'm not saying he's a top 12 wide receiver, but I think he is absolutely in the mix for that kind of wide receiver 2 for your team, or in an ideal world, and you could probably get him here right now, a great flex option.
I was going to say, when you're playing a league that has flex option, you're definitely looking for your 2 big targets on the outside, and then you're probably filtering through a good tight end play, a good matchup for the tight end, or you're looking for a really, I know a lot of people, if they're heavy on running backs, you could almost throw Alvin Kamara in a flex in a lot of ways because he gets a lot of receiving yards.
That's right.
So in this pick right here, you're saying we've got the option. If you got two wide receivers, are going to have good numbers.
That's right.
He'd be a good flex option.
Great flex. If you can take him as your 3rd or 4th wide receiver, which is very possible. I would say if I was advocating, especially in PPR leagues, for just a general draft strategy, which you should always read the board, read the room. Don't go into it with a fixed idea of what you're going to do. But for the most part, I would be looking to go running back early. Running back has thinned out considerably, especially with Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins getting injured and missing the season now. And I would say look at running back, or if you're at the back of the first, going a tight end like Travis Kelce.
That was my first pick last season.
Yeah, locking in that tight end advantage every single week. You've got the best tight end on the field. And then going wide receiver later, because wide receiver is as deep as I've ever seen it. I think there are legitimately 60 to 70 wide receivers right now that I would feel comfortable starting in, if not a starting spot, at least a flex spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who do you think is going to have what we would call the most overrated season? Who's a player that at the end of the day, they get a lot of attention, and you're here to tell the people, hey, pump the brakes on this cat?
Yeah, I would think right now I tend to trust my gut with these sorts of things, and I worry about this Steelers offense. Just anyone from that team. Big Ben, I think this is the year that he falls off the cliff. I mean, we started to see it. He wasn't trusting his O-line at the end of last season, so I think he was getting the ball out faster than any quarterback at the end of last season. We saw he put up some good numbers in garbage time against the Browns in that playoff game when they got eliminated. But I'm just worried about this Steelers team because of the offensive line. This is a point that has been beaten to death all offseason by beat writers and fantasy analysts, that this team's offensive line is bottom 5 in the league.
So you're saying anybody on that Steelers offense we might need to be wary of?
Najee Harris, I would be fine taking as like a high-end running back 2 in your redraft leagues. The wide receivers, man, they are super talented across the board.
Juju's great.
Juju, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson. I mean, you've got talent coming out of your ears. What I would say is, who is going to emerge out of that group? You know, there are teams like the Vikings last year. Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson were both like top 15 options. So it's possible that maybe this team supports 3 wide receivers. But I think you're splitting the pie a little bit. Najee Harris, I'm worried with the offensive line. Big Ben, if he falls off a cliff, what does that do to the wide receivers? So as much as I think this team is talented, there's a lot of question marks that give me pause.
Let me ask you this about the Steelers specifically.
Yeah.
There's a player on the Steelers that I think could start in many other places, and I don't know why he has not gotten the move.
Don't say Josh Dobbs.
That's who I was going to say.
Oh, no. Dobbs is fine. He's a great backup.
You think?
Yes.
You think he's better than Mason Rudolph? Let's say,
Is he even going to beat out Dwayne Haskins? Is he going to make the roster?
After what they've said about Haskins lately this past week, I don't know.
I saw this morning he's making the roster. He's making the 53.
So all right. So this was the news I was going to bring you, by the way, since we're talking about people making teams and all that.
Which was what?
Cam Newton.
Cam Newton getting cut. Straight up cut.
Not traded, people.
Yeah, shocking.
Cut.
Truly.
So you already knew it.
He can host the podcast. We'll bring Cam in here. He'll start hosting the podcast.
That's right. Well, you look at, they had no investment. There's a great axiom I learned from the Fantasy Footballers podcast of follow the money. That's a team's most valuable resource. It tells you what their plans are with players.
Yes.
Cam Newton was like a 1-year, $1 million deal. It was essentially the veteran minimum.
Vet minimum.
And they could cut him with no money lost. So as much as I thought Mac Jones should get the start, I thought it would be Cam to start the season. I was shocked when I saw they just straight up cut him.
But one thing we know about Belichick is he's unconventional. And he's got a quarterback right now that is probably closer to Brady than any other quarterback we've seen in a long time.
That's what they said. It's very, very on brand for Kyle Shanahan to go grab a ceiling lifting type of quarterback like Trey Lance, and very on brand for Bill Belichick to go grab basically a Tom Brady clone.
Yes.
So I thought Mac Jones would start the season. I'm not surprised by that, but I thought that Cam Newton would at least be the backup, and now he's gone.
So Dallas is supposedly making a play for him.
They should. Their backups suck.
Is Dak even that good?
Dak is great, but it worries me having lived through the Andrew Luck shoulder weirdness. Remember that, Swanee? He's getting pulled off the field.
Still got my Luck jersey.
Right?
I need to get a Leonard jersey. I signed one.
I have a lot of opinions about Andrew.
Yeah, getting pulled off the field for a Hail Mary attempt for Jacoby Brissett. Like, remember that? When we were like, is his shoulder just messed up for good? That is, I think, the place that Dak is at right now. I'm just getting a little bit of like Luck flashbacks to, if it's down here and it's like a baseball pitching type of injury, I don't know, man. That really concerns me. So I would be investing heavily in that backup spot if I were them.
So I'm just going to derail this conversation.
Please do.
There's other things I want to talk to you about.